What if I told you that China doesn't need soldiers to take control of countries? It just needs debt. No tanks, no invasions, just loans. Over the last decade, China has lent hundreds of billions of dollars to poor and developing nations. Roads, ports, railways, infrastructure that looks like help, but comes with a hidden cost. Because when these countries can't pay back, China doesn't ask for money, it asks for control. Strategic ports, trade routes, political influence. So the real question is not whether China is helping these countries, but whether it's buying them. To understand why China uses debt, you first need to understand its goal. China wants global influence, not just economically, but politically and strategically. For decades, the United States and Europe controlled global finance through institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. China decided to build its own alternative. That's where the Belt and Road Initiative comes in. China offers massive loans to countries that desperately need infrastructure: highways, ports, power plants, railways. And unlike Western institutions, China doesn't ask for democracy, transparency, or human rights reforms. For governments in trouble, this sounds perfect. But these loans are not aid, they are business deals. High-interest loans, complex contracts, and repayment terms that many of these countries simply cannot afford in the long run. And that's where the real strategy begins. China's debt strategy follows a simple pattern. Step 1, a country needs money. Its economy's weak, infrastructure is outdated, and no one else is willing to lend. Step 2, China steps in. It offers a large loan to build something strategic, usually a port, a highway, or a power plant. Step 3, the project is built, but the debt grows. The loan is often expensive, and the construction is usually handled by Chinese companies, meaning much of the money goes straight back to China. Step 4, the country can't pay. And this is the key moment. China doesn't forgive the debt. Instead, it renegotiates. Long-term leases, control over infrastructure, exclusive access to trade routes, political leverage. No invasion, no war, just paperwork. Debt becomes power. The clearest example of China's debt strategy is Sri Lanka. In the early 2000s, Sri Lanka wanted to become a major trade hub in the Indian Ocean. To do that, it needed a modern port. China was more than happy to help. Beijing offered billions of dollars in loans to build the Hambantota port. The project moved forward, but there was a problem. The port never generated enough revenue. Ships didn't come, the economy slowed, and Sri Lanka couldn't repay the debt. By 2017, the country was in serious trouble, so China made an offer. In exchange for debt relief, Sri Lanka handed over control of the port to a Chinese state-owned company on a 99-year lease. China didn't take land by force, it didn't send troops, it took the port through debt. Today, Hambantota is not just an economic asset, it's a strategic location near major global shipping routes. And Sri Lanka is not alone. This case became a warning sign for the rest of the world. Sri Lanka was not an exception. It was a preview. Once you start looking, the same pattern appears again and again across the world. Africa is the clearest example. Over the last 2 decades, China has become the largest lender to African nations. More than railways, highways, ports, and power plants, all financed by Chinese loans. In countries like Kenya, Zambia, and Ethiopia, Chinese-funded infrastructure now forms the backbone of national economies. But with that infrastructure came massive debt. In Zambia, debt repayments to China became so heavy that the country defaulted. In Kenya, reports revealed clauses in loan contracts that could give China leverage over strategic assets, including ports, in case of non-payment. And this isn't limited to Africa. In Asia, countries like Pakistan, Laos, and Cambodia have accumulated enormous debt through Chinese-backed projects. Pakistan's China-Pakistan Economic Corridor alone is worth tens of billions of dollars, tying the country's energy and transport sectors directly to Beijing. In Laos, Chinese loans financed a high-speed railway linking the country to China, a project so expensive that it pushed national debt to dangerous levels, effectively making the economy dependent on Chinese support. Even in Latin America, the strategy is spreading. China has financed ports in Peru, energy projects in Argentina, and mining operations across the region. In many cases, repayment is tied directly to commodities like oil, copper, or lithium. This means China doesn't just get paid back in money, it gets paid in resources. And all of this connects to one larger vision. China isn't randomly lending money. It is building a global network. Ports that connect trade routes, railways that move raw materials, energy projects that lock in long-term dependence. This network reduces China's reliance on Western-controlled trade routes and financial systems. It creates alternative pathways for global commerce, pathways where China sets the rules. And the most important part? Everything looks legal. Everything is signed. Everything is voluntary. No occupation, no colonial flags, just contracts, debt, and influence. By the time countries realize the cost, the leverage is already gone. At this point, an important question comes up. Is China intentionally trapping countries in debt, or is this simply smart business? China strongly rejects the idea of debt trap diplomacy. Beijing argues that no country is forced to take its loans, and that infrastructure projects help developing nations grow. And in some cases, that's true. Many countries have benefited from Chinese-funded roads, ports, and power plants. Western institutions often refuse to lend, while China steps in quickly with fewer conditions. But critics point to a different reality. Chinese loans are often opaque. Contracts are rarely public, and key clauses can limit a country's ability to restructure debt or seek help from international institutions. This creates dependency. When repayment becomes impossible, the negotiating power shifts entirely to China. It's not that China plans every failure, but when failure happens, China is positioned to win. So the debate isn't whether China is helping or harming countries. The real debate is this: who holds the leverage when things go wrong? And in most cases, the answer is clear. China's debt strategy doesn't just affect individual countries. It reshapes the global balance of power. By controlling ports, energy infrastructure, and key trade routes, China gains influence far beyond economics. It gains leverage in diplomacy, security, and international decision-making. This is especially important for the United States. Many of the ports and projects financed by China sit along critical maritime routes, the same routes that global trade and US naval power depend on. As China's influence expands, America's ability to shape global trade rules slowly declines. And this isn't happening through confrontation. It's happening quietly. While wars dominate headlines, financial agreements redraw the map in the background. Countries deeply tied to Chinese debt are less likely to challenge Beijing politically. Voting patterns shift, alliances weaken, neutrality disappears. This is why debt has become one of the most powerful tools of the 21st century, not because it destroys countries, but because it binds them. China's not trying to conquer the world with armies, it's doing it with contracts, loans, and leverage. For some countries, Chinese investment has brought growth and opportunity. For others, it has created long-term dependency and loss of control. The truth is more complex than propaganda on either side. Debt itself is not the weapon. Dependency is. And the question every country must ask is not who offers the money, but what happens if they can't pay it back. Now, the future of global power may not be decided on battlefields, but in financial agreements signed behind closed doors. So what do you think? Is China's debt strategy smart geopolitics or a new form of economic colonialism? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if you want clear, no-nonsense breakdowns of global power, economics, and geopolitics, subscribe to the channel and join us. This is just the beginning.